What's going on, you guys? This is all the new one with PS4, and I'm going to be giving you guys another Marvel's Avengers video. So this video I'm going to be giving you guys is going to be a build video. This build video is going to be the Melee Widow. So the reason why I'm calling the Melee Widow is because it's for Black Widow and it's a melee build. So obviously not that creative, but anyways, this build is going to be very powerful. You're going to be doing so much damage whether you are stealthed, unstealthed, using your ult, or not using your ult. I don't know if you guys have watched the battery effect video or basically on how to boost your damage, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend watching that because you're going to want to basically be using that as well as using with this build. I basically use that whole idea, not idea, but I use that whole damage method with pretty much all of the builds I end up running, just so I can push my damage to the max. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the gear first. Alright, so as you can see, I'm running mainly purple gear. I have one gold gear, but the thing is, it doesn't really matter what you have. They can all be purple and still be just as strong as gold gear. Gold gear is just more expensive, and it just pretty much looks better. I mean, it looks nice, but that's really about it. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the stats first. So the biggest thing that a lot of players end up doing is they actually look at the rating on their builds. Don't pay attention to your rating. Pay attention to the actual stats that you have. So on the melee rating, as you can see, it does use might, valor, proficiency. Those are the three main stats that we are going to basically go with. But for the melee rating, you want to have, I would say at the minimum, 1400 damage. So if you have at least 1400 damage on your melee rating, then you should be good. If you have at least 1200, that should still be a decent amount to do enough damage. Anything lower, though, I wouldn't recommend. I would definitely push your damage higher than 1200. If you're 1400 plus, you're in a good spot. 1600 plus, good spot. But if you have over 2000, that's a little too much. But you know, if you can have 2000 melee damage while keeping enough valor, like a high amount of valor and a high amount of proficiency, or a decent amount of proficiency and a decent amount of intensity, then you should be fine. So as you can see, 1483 melee damage is what I'm at. And then I have 2311 heroic effectiveness. The reason why you want to push your valor as much as possible is because every character pretty much uses abilities. So the heroic effectiveness for Black Widow is basically just going to give her more damage. I mean, that's just common sense for everyone. The more heroic effectiveness you have, the more damage your abilities will end up doing. And as well as the crit damage, I'm at over 300% crit damage. I can technically hit 350 something percent crit damage, but I lose so much more everywhere else that I kind of decided to just drop the crit damage a little bit and then put it elsewhere. And it's not just that, it's also the perks. My proficiency, I have 121 proficiency. I think if you're around 120 and above, you should be at 20% crit chance. So you want to definitely be at 20 and higher base crit chance, so that way you can have it'll be a little easier just for you to hit your crits without being invisible or be using an ult or whatever other ability there is, or using a damage buff. Now the other thing about proficiency that's going to be very useful is the fact that you have that perk chance. So if you can get your perk chance higher, then that's going to be a lot better for yourself, because the perk chance is your percentages to proc on your actual perks. So like, for example, if I'm using an ability or if I'm using a gear piece that says 5% chance or a 10% chance to proc damage buff. Well, if my proficiency is, 20% for perk chance, then it's going to increase that perk to grant me a 10% chance to do damage buff. It'll go from 10 to 12% because adding that extra 2%. So obviously if you ended up getting like 100% perk chance, then it would go from a 10 to 20%. But I mean, for the most part, I think perk chance is important to have. And not only that, it also affects your major artifact. And then, like I said, and the last stat you want to end up getting is going to be intensity. Intensity is going to be a minor stat you want to go for. When I say minor stat, that just means it's something that you're not going to focus on, but it's something that you want to have that's going to make it a little easier and a little better for yourself gameplay wise. So the three major stats is going to be the might, valor, proficiency. Those are the three main stats. Well, I guess the two main stats is might and valor, and then proficiency and intensity are your minor stats. So now for the major artifacts, you can actually go with two or even maybe three different major artifacts. For me, I personally would go with two different versions. There's the Tacticon, and there's the Sacred Nornstone of Lethal Will. There is also the Ring of Nebelung, or Nebelung. You can get this from completing the Step 7 of Reign of Supreme, but I mean, you don't necessarily need this one. It just gives you more of your heroic charge back or health back whenever you pick up orbs, and have a chance to also drop orbs when you defeat an enemy. But I mean, this is an option if you are having like sustain issues or anything like that. But Sacred Nornstone of Lethal Will is going to be a very useful, very, very good uh, artifact to run, or I guess a major artifact, exotic artifact to run, because you're going to be keeping up your damage buff. You're always going to have a damage buff, no matter what you're doing. You're going to always have a damage buff going. So when you have a damage buff going, you're going to actually get an increase of 6% crit chance. The thing that you might not know is damage buff, it gives you a 30% crit chance increase. It doesn't actually give you a base damage increase, not that I'm aware of, but it does give you a 30% base crit chance increase. So if you're at 20% base, you'll end up going from 20% to 50% crit chance while you have a damage buff active. So on top of that, you'll end up getting a 6%. Now I think the base of this is 5%, but with more proficiency, it raises it. So I'm at 6%. And not only that, but this also lets you have your damage buff for 4 seconds longer. And then for the L3R3, or whatever it is on, I think it's E on PC, and then obviously L3R3 as well on Xbox, you have Tears of Fence. And this allows you to just proc damage buff on your own. And I mean, it's a very useful way of just getting your damage buff by yourself, so that way you can just proc it elsewhere afterwards. Now you have the Tacticon. The Tacticon is a little bit more on my favorite side, mainly because I did start leveling this up first before the Nornstone, but it's also mainly because I'm always affecting an enemy with status effect. So that 12% increased status damage from all attacks is going to be really nice, because that's 12% higher that I'm going to be proccing my status effect. And then my status effects will be doing 12% more damage as well. And not only that, but I'm going to be doing a 12% increased damage against enemies that are affected by status effect. And then also, you get a plus 10 to Valor and plus 10 to Might, which is kind of dumb that no other artifact gets base stats increase. But yeah, I mean, the Tacticon is the only artifact that gives you a base stat increase. It might not be by much. It's only by 5% crit damage, or 5%, basically like 5% might in a sense. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, that's what you're gonna want to run, is the Tacticon. Well, I mean, out of the two options, Tacticon or Sacred Nornstone of the Lethal Will. Alright, so now for the minor artifacts. The minor artifacts is going to be very easy, because all you have to do is just anything you have with Valor, you're going to put on. The hard part is going to be getting the right gear perks, though. So, obviously you want to get anything that gives you a triple Valor on it, because you don't want to go with triple Mights. I did go with triple Mights, and it is not useful at all. Your damage on your abilities is dropped a lot more. Your damage crit-wise is dropped way more. It's just terrible. I'm just going to show you stat-wise. So my melee damage is 1483, 303 crit damage, and 2311 heroic effectiveness. Now, if I were to take off 1, I go to 1918 melee damage, 1743 heroic effectiveness, and 251% crit damage. So that's already a huge damage loss right there, ability and crit-wise, because your abilities can crit, and if they do, that's a lot of damage. Now I do gain 500 extra melee damage though, which is a lot of melee damage, just base melee damage. Now if I were to switch and get another triple might stat. So as you can see, that's over 200 melee damage increased right there. Now I'm at 2374 melee damage, but my heroic effectiveness goes down to 1164 and 197% crit damage. So going double might triples or double triple mights is not the idea to go with. You can technically go with one triple might and then one triple valor if you wanted to, just to kind of balance it out between. But if you really wanted to push the damage to the max, you would definitely rather, for me, I personally would rather just run two triple valor valor artifacts rather than having any melee or might, because you're going to get your might from your gear. And the perks that you want to have on it is going to be something that's going to benefit either your melee or your your light combo finishers or your heavy combo finishers. You want to have something that's going to benefit that. And then what would also be a very good one is going to be the spin resistance. If you can have both with spin resistance, then that would be amazing, because that would equal to 100% spin resistance, or even one of them with spin resistance, because you can get spin resistance on your defense gear as well. But yeah, I mean, if you can get spin resistance on both while getting triple valors, that's the best, basically best in slot artifacts you can ever find on the game for any character, pretty much. But yeah, I mean, for me, triple valor, 100%. Now for the melee gear. So this isn't necessarily the melee gear I was actually looking for, but this is not bad at all. This is still a very, very, very good melee gear piece. So the perk is going to be lightweight buff, gamma poetry, and stealth breaker. Now with the lightweight buff, I don't really like lightweight combo finishers because they're just not that great, because I'm always finishing my moves with heavy, so I kind of have to end up finishing them a lot with with light combos, unfortunately. But if you can get the heavyweight buff, that would actually be way better, because the fact that it's just a heavy combo finisher. So you can do square, 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 triangle, that's a heavyweight combo, or that's a heavy combo finisher. Or you just do triangle or your heavy combo, your heavy damage 3 times, that's a heavy combo finisher. Whereas with the light combo finishers, you have to do light attack like 4 or 5 times, which can kind of take some time. I think it's 4 taps in order to do a full combo. But yeah, I mean, I don't really care for it. But on the bright side, my lightweight attacks do, I think at the most for the combo finisher, it's the highest I've seen it do without me being stealthed or ultimate is around 50,000 damage. Which is really, it's a lot of damage for just lightweight attacks, a lightweight combo finisher. With a heavyweight heavy combo finisher though, I've done over like 50 to 60,000 damage, and when buffed, 70 to 90,000 damage, which is really, really, really insane. But for the ideal gear perks you want to have, it's gonna be Spark, like what is it called, Faultless Spark or Faultless Buff. The reason why is because those are based off of crits, not combo finishers. This is a crit build, so you're gonna be doing anything you can to get crits. Now you can still technically go with a heavyweight buff or heavyweight spark. The reason why you want to also go with the spark buff is because spark is going to basically give you a heroic charge when you deal heavyweight combo finisher or crits or lightweight combo finishers, depending on the first perk, the name first perk. But spark itself is going to be giving you a heroic charge burst, and a heroic charge burst is going to allow you to get your heroic charges back, your abilities back faster. Now, obviously, you want to have somewhere in your gear piece a damage buff, and you want to make it accessible, like easily accessible. So this is one of the easier ways of getting your damage buff. Like I said earlier, damage buff is going to give you 30% crit chance increase. So once you get that damage buff applied, it's going to be a lot more damage just all around, and it's just going to be easier as well to proc on anything that requires you to get a crit, that requires you to use like crits in general. Now for the third perk, Stealth Breaker is very good because of the fact that you get a 15% increased damage when invisible, but you also get it, you can get it elsewhere as well. But the thing is, it stacks, and I'll let you know in just a little bit, but it stacks, which is really nice. Um, but the other perk that you can also go with is going to be 135% crit damage when you're overcharged, basically. It's called Shadow Ops Flare. Shadow Ops Flare is going to be very, very good when it comes to like dishing out the most amount of damage as possible. And it's pretty much impossible for me to find anything with Shadow Ops Flare with a damage buff from lightweight or heavyweight or faultless spark, lightweight spark, anything like that. I have tried farming for it for a few days now, like for like 18 hours each. It just not want it doesn't want to drop for me. But I mean, I'm still going to continue farming for it to try and make it perfect. But this is pretty much the only piece in this build that I am missing to make it perfect. Now for the range gear, I got super lucky with this. This is probably the most god rolled piece I've ever found in this game. The Adept Spark rounds, and not only that, it's legendary. The stats are it's all right. They're not in the 40s, but they are still really good. 33 might, 45 proficiency, and 38 valor. So with this, the gear perks you want to have on this is exactly what you see right here. Adept Spark, chance weak point grants a heroic charge burst for all heroics. Everything pretty much has a weak point. So you're going to be getting your heroic charge burst all the time. You don't even have to crit. Now if you wanted to, you could get the one where you do a crit, but with ranged attacks do crits and then you get your heroic burst back, or heroic burst for all heroics. But Adept Spark works just as well, if not better, because it's the Adept or the weak point ones is a higher percentage. It's a higher percentage chance than the crit ones. But yeah, and then I have Plasma ACP. Ranged attacks with full auto shot deal plasma damage. This will make it a little easier for you to proc the full status effect on a lot of enemies, especially if you're not really a good shot. Like for me, I end up missing a lot of my shots because of the fact that my frames just completely drop. Just they go from 30 frames to like 10. Yes, I'm on the PlayStation Slim. I'm not on the Pro because my Pro broke. I'm not on PC because I can't afford a PC right now. But my frames just drop completely. So having the full auto just makes it a little easier because I can just spray it. Plus, I'm within melee range anyways, so I can just zip to the enemy and then just a hold triangle or hold my heavy attack. Hopefully it doesn't bug out and then actually staggers them. And then I can just go to town with spraying this at them to proc the full plasma. And then I just, heavy attack them or light attack them, whichever one. And then they're dead. I mean, it takes a couple seconds to kill them too. But this right here, I think, is God ruled. For me personally, I like the full auto. I know some people prefer the high cal, some people just prefer the regular pistols. But whatever it is, just go for whatever you can. But you want to make sure you get those two perks. Those two perks are going to be very, very good, as well as those 3 stats. Now for the chest piece, it's not the best chest. It has the best stats, but it doesn't have the best perks. I think the perks I want, I think I have them in my inventory right here. Right here. Nimble Spark. This is going to be a very useful one as well. So the reason why is because when you evade, you get a heroic charge burst. You don't want to go for the one that gives you the damage buff. I mean, you could technically go with the one that gives you the damage buff, so the nimble buff. But Nimble Spark is going to be, I think, personally more useful because this generally just means you get your stealth back faster. You're going to get your ultimate back faster. You're going to get your Widow's Bite back faster. So for me personally, Nimble Spark is going to be better to go with. And then there's going to be another buff that you want to end up getting. It's kind of like the Courageous Protection, but I think it's called Courageous Buff. So you have a chance when critically injured to get a damage buff. So that's what you want to go with. Or you can go with Courageous Inspiration. So you have a chance when critically injured, you get a willpower buff or willpower boost, basically giving you healing when you get injured, which is going to be really nice. And then for the last perk, you can go with, I guess, some type of resistance, which would, for me personally, would be the spin resistance. So for example, if you only have one artifact that has spin resistance, you can also get spin resistance on your defensive gear. So if you can get spin resistance, that's 100% right there. Obviously, you can get 150% if you wanted, if you wanted to overkill it, but it doesn't really matter. But yeah, if you can get to 100% spin resistance just off of the defense gear and the one artifact, that's pretty much the best way to go. Now the last thing is going to be the Spectre's Band. Spectre's Band is going to be a very hard drop to get because you can only get this from daily missions, from the daily villain sector mission. Now if you wanted to, you could technically farm it, the daily villain sector, which I am going to end up making another video for. I will show you guys how you could farm it. It's very easy, very simple to do, but one person's not going to really benefit from it. But the Spectre's Band is what you're going to want to go with. It's going to come with proficiency and might. Those are static stats that come every time. The ones I ended up getting were very low stats. It came 37. It came in the 30 for proficiency and like 39 might or something. So they were really low rolls. What would have been nice is if they came in the 50s. So like 50 something and then like or even a high 40 number, like a 48, 49 base proficiency and might to a 50 something. But for my Spectre's Band, this is really good. Heavyweight Blessing, 11.5% increased crit hit chance for a heavy combo finisher. I do a lot of heavy combo finishers, but for the most part, you're going to want to be... it would be better for me to have the lightweight blessings because I have lightweight combo finishers on this. Lightweight buff and a gamma apogee. That's the only way I'm going to be benefiting lightweight damage. So if it came with lightweight blessing, that would have been way better. But with Spectre's Band, you also get Stealth Blitz. This is a static perk. It's a main perk for this piece. So with Stealth Blitz, it's actually going to stack on top of the Stealth Breaker. They're basically two different perks, but they are going to do they're going to do the same, but they stack on top of each other, pretty much. Yes, I've tested it. I tested the damage difference on when I'm invisible with it, and it's pretty noticeable that you're going from a 15 to a 30% damage increase when you're invisible. And then you have Berserker buff. Successfully land 16 hits in a rapid succession without taking any damage to grant a damage buff. What's nice about this, it doesn't specify... Well, I mean, it's kind of annoying that it doesn't specify, but it doesn't specify that you have to do melee or range. You can do either or. So if you're running the full auto, or where is it? Yeah, the full auto, you have a chance to actually proc your, or not a chance, but you can proc your Berserker buff easily with this because you're doing more than you can do 16 hits in just a couple of seconds, very quickly. Now, obviously in the heat of the battle, sometimes you won't be able to use your auto, but you can easily do 16 hits with a melee too, with the lightweights. So, Berserker buff 100% all the way. You do not want to go with the buff or the perk that is based off of getting 3 kills in like a quick succession or whatever it's called, or rapid succession, because any perk that's based off getting kills is a bad perk. It's terrible. And the reason why is because if you're doing a boss fight or generally any fight where it's 3 enemies or less, you're not going to get that buff then, right? You're not going to get that damage buff because it has to be, you have to kill 3 enemies or more basically to get that, to benefit from that buff. And it has to be within like 20 seconds from each other, which is fine. But against the boss, you're not going to be able to have this buff. You're never going to get that buff against the boss until they spawn ads. But yeah, I mean, this right here I think is pretty much God ruled, except for the heavyweight blessing. Instead of that, it would have been better if it came with lightweight blessing. But yeah, now let's go ahead and take a look at the skills. I'm not going to worry about the primary skills because obviously once you hit level 50, you're going to have everything unlocked, unless you have the bug where it takes like 1 skill point away from you. But yeah, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at the support heroic abilities. For solo play, I generally just go with Eclipse because obviously my AI team doesn't really make use of Mortal Cloak. But if you're playing in an actual group, or even with one other player, Mortal Cloak is going to be the way to go because this gives that other player 30% crit chance increase when they're affected by Veil of the Shadows. For AI teammates, they are also affected by the Mortal Cloak as well, but they just don't seem to do that well damage wise anyways, because a lot of times your AI companions seem to not really attack that much. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they just stand there waiting for you to do damage to the enemy, or they're just standing around picking their nose or something. That's why I went with Eclipse, just to increase the range of Veil of Shadows, only when I'm solo play, so that way my allies are hidden as well, and then the enemies would just stand there, because when everyone's invisible, the enemies just stand there like confused. For the main or the damage perk or the damage side of this, I went with Night Terror just to give myself a 25% crit chance increase. Now, this you can either go with this or you can go with Darkthorn. With Darkthorn, you get a 20% increased damage to nearby enemies when activating Veil of Shadows. So this is a huge damage buff right there. Um, if you were to go with this, that would be a 50% increase to being invisible, or damage to being invisible, because you already get the 30 from your gear, but you would also be getting a 20 from Darkthorn. But if you wanted to just make sure you can get your guaranteed crits, because I'm basically going from 70% to 95% crit chance when invisible, just because I wanted to make sure I can guarantee my crits versus that extra 20% damage. But that extra 20% damage is a huge increase, though, damage wise. So if you think you're already at a good amount, like if you think 70% crit chance is fine, 75, whatever it is that you're at, if you think you're fine with that, then go with Darkthorn. If you think you want to go and push more crit chance, like if you're sitting at a 25% base crit chance and you want to be at 100, then you should definitely go with Night Terror, because that way you're guaranteeing your crits wherever you're at. Next up, I went with Lightning Fist on my Assault Heroic. And the reason why is because Lightning Fist is a very powerful ability. Now, obviously, depending on the situation, I do switch it from Lightning Fist to Taser Dart, because Taser Dart does so much damage as well. It's insane how much damage this does. Um, and it's also nice over the super static dart, because super static dart, just the base electric field or the base Widow's Bite, it's not that great because it pushes the enemies out of the radius, which can get really annoying, and then they just stop taking damage from this. But with the taser dart, it sticks to them and it does damage to them for like 3 or 4 seconds, and it's like 5 or 6 ticks, which is a lot, and you can hit up for like 40 to 60,000 damage per tick, which again is a lot of damage. But with the lightning fist, you can do up to 300, 400, 500,000 damage, depending on all the buffs you have active. And then I also I kind of switched between the two. I go with Paralyzing Bite, which when Widow's Bite's inflicted, it does 40% more stun damage, increasing the chance to stun your enemies, allowing you to basically take them down or do takedowns. Or you can just add another charge, Lethal Bite. So I just go with Lethal Bite because I like having more charges. But a lot of times I do end up going with Paralyzing Bite, but I mean, just lately I haven't been going with this because, I mean, for the most part, I'm just one-shotting most enemies when I inflict the battery effect on them. Now, for my ultimate, I went with Galvanic Bite. The reason why is because this is just giving me an already increase to my Widow's Bite by 20%. So my Lightning Fist is going to be doing 20% more damage, or my Taser Dart is going to be doing 20% more damage. Now, obviously, if you don't want to go with that and you wanted more damage for your staff, Power Staff is the way to go. But the only thing you have to worry about with Power Staff is you need to make sure you are overcharged. If you're not overcharged with your intrinsic, this is a dead stat. This is the dead perk. But if you have it active, you're going to be doing so much damage. Because there was one point where my lightweight finisher with the staff, with the ultimate, I did 417,000 damage with it. That's a lot of damage with the ultimate, just the combo finisher alone. That's probably the most damage I've ever seen anywhere, personally. And this is not a takedown. Takedowns, I don't care about how much damage someone does with the takedown, because I've done over 600,000 damage with the takedown. So I'm not even worried. And that's just a solo takedown. Team takedowns, you can do up to like 20 million damage, but team takedowns also don't count. I personally don't care for that. But yeah, you can go with Power Staff if you think you're confident enough to keeping your intrinsic up, your overcharged up, or you can go with Galvanic Bite if you just want to make it easier, just to get that easy damage boost. And then For the other side, you can go with Kilowatt, which allows you to do higher stun damage, so allowing you to basically make it to where you can do takedowns more frequently while you're in your ult, or you can have an increase of 30% damage resistance. You already get an increase of 15 right here. Power Surge also provides a 15% reduction to incoming damage, so you can add on top of another 30%, so you're already at 45% damage resistance. Um, I mean, to me, I think, like, for me, I personally went with this because I tend to take a lot of damage regardless. So whether I'm invisible or not, because for some reason it's like the enemy AIs can still see you sometimes, which is really annoying. So I decided to go with Indomitable Force, and I've noticed I've survived a lot more things versus going with Power Grid for that extra 4 seconds. I didn't really care too much for the extra 4 seconds versus going Kilowatt. I do like Kilowatt, or I did like Kilowatt a lot because I did used to do a lot of takedowns. And then obviously you're going to end up getting all your intrinsic stuff. And now for the intrinsic ability, I went with Overcharge Critical. And the reason why is because I'm going to be doing a lot of crits. When I'm invisible, I'm pretty much doing 95% crit chance. So having that extra crit damage is going to be very important. Now, if you don't have a lot of crit chance, then I would probably just go with the base damage increase. A 5% damage increase to all damage is still really strong. They basically go hand in hand. A 15% crit damage increase and a 5% base damage increase is pretty much almost the same. Obviously, if you crit, you're going to do a little bit more with just this, but even if you crit with the base damage increase, that's still a lot more damage increased. So you can kind of choose between the two, but like I said, it depends on how much crit chance you already have. If you're close to 100% crit chance, go with the overcharge critical. If you're not, if you're like 50 to 60, 70% crit chance, or I'd say 50 to 60% crit chance, I would go with overcharge damage. Now for the middle, I would go with Intrinsic Charge. All attacks increase the charge rate of the Intrinsic Shadow Ops meter by 15%. And the reason why is because you're going to be switching between range and melee, and you're going to be doing a lot of different things. So, I mean, even your abilities, your Widow's Bite, is going to be able to help charge your Shadow Ops meter. So this is going to be really good. It's just all damage pretty much. Now, if you didn't want to go with that, you could technically go with Takedown Charge. Takedown Charge gives you an automatic 20-point increase because there's 100 points you have to build up. So if you get a takedown, it gives you a 20-point increase just right off the bat. And I mean, you're gonna also get takedown orbs as heroic orbs. So I mean, that's just another increase. So if you wanted to do that, if you think you're going to be doing takedowns a lot, then obviously that would be better to go with. But on boss fights, you're not going to be able to build up your shadow ups anyways because you can't do takedown on them. So that's why I personally went with the intrinsic charge. And the next one the last one for intrinsic, I went with heroic overcharge. But there are a lot of times where I actually went with efficient overcharge because it's just sometimes it gets really annoying when you're going from one enemy to the next and then you start seeing your overcharge just dropping rapidly. So having the efficient overcharge is actually really good to have as well because it's a 1 second delay. It sounds too quick, but it's actually pretty nice. But I did go with heroic overcharge because I just like having my abilities come back faster regardless. Now for range, I went with cluster grenade because it's just easier. I mean, it's a bigger radius versus having the hazard grenade. The hazard grenade, it's basically like increasing your intensity, it's increasing the status and stun damage overall. But I didn't care too much for that because it's a small radius. And then you also have proximity grenade, which is pretty nice. It's a pretty big radius as well, but I didn't care for it either because I don't use this. I mean, I used it, but I hated it. It's just not that great. I just went with cluster grenade, like I said, because it's a bigger radius. It's a three. It's basically three of these, but it's just not as strong as this. And now I use flash freeze. The reason why I use flash freeze is because when I go against like something like an adaptoid, the cryo adaptoid, or any type of not cryo, the plasma adaptoid, or pretty much anything that does plasma, but mainly the plasma adaptoid, flash freeze is going to be really good. Anything cryo is going to be good against plasma enemies. Or you can go with shock. but you already have shock just off your heavy attacks alone and your Widow's Bite, and you can go with Thermite, but you already have plasma damage just off your SMGs anyways, or your ranged attacks anyways. And then I went with recoil compensated. It doesn't matter what you go with. It just comes down to yourself. Uh, I wouldn't go with the reload because the reason why is you can just automatically reload just by pressing left and right on your D-pad, just by switching the pistol type really quick. You don't have to, so you don't actually have to manually reload. It's just going to be way faster to just switch your pistol and switch back right away. And then you can go with the extended magazine just so you can have extra shots, which is nice. But like I said, it just comes down to your own playstyle. If you wanted more recoil, if you're not that great at, I guess, if you're not that great with the recoil or anything, but if you're really good with your shots, you probably don't need this then. Now for the invisibility side, I went with increases all status damage while invisible by 20%. This is going to allow you to proc your plasma damage or any type of damage like shock or gamma, whatever you're using, a lot easier because it's a 20% increase. The stun, it's not going to be that useful because of the fact that you're not going to be doing takedowns all the time. Plus, you can easily do takedowns anyways. And the thing is, you're going to be melting your enemies really quickly, whether you're invisible or not. So having that extra stun damage isn't going to be useful. Stun damage to me is only going to be good for characters who are more support, who don't do a lot of damage. Because if you're going to kill your enemies quicker than stunning them before you can take down, this is pretty much a dead stat to me. It's not entirely dead. It's still useful to have stun damage, but just the difference between stun damage versus status. Status is going to be the better one overall. Plus, it's a higher percentage by 5%, so obviously this is going to be better to go with. And then you have extended invisibility, invisible recharge, and invisible willpower. All three of these are really good. I just went with the invisibility or extended invisibility just because the extra 2 seconds can make or break a just the damage output. But if you feel like you need to heal yourself because you don't have a healer on you, but you have your invisibility perk, just go with this then because it's 1% per second, and I think the invisibility lasts for 30 seconds or so. I want to say it's around 30 seconds, so that's a 30% willpower increase or regeneration. And now the next thing is going to be critical melee. So critical melee, I went with this because it's just more crit chance as well. So because I'm at 20% base, and then you get another 30% from the damage buff, so that's 50%. On top of this, when you're invisible, that's another 20%, so that's 70% on top of the 25% you get from the specialty perk. Where is it? Right over here, from Night Terror. So that's 95%. That's the only way you're going to end up reaching it. Otherwise, if you don't want to go with that, if you're content with the crit chance you're already at while you're invisible, then go with critical damage. Increases crit damage while invisible by 15%. Super nice. And then the utility, I just went with the performing a takedown spawns a heroic orb. This is probably the best thing to go with on any character in general, just because heroic orbs, heroic abilities, having that is just going to make your build much better. I did go with the intrinsic version, or the intrinsic orb, so I can always upkeep my damage, my 20% damage, because this was actually really nice, but I don't think anything can ever beat heroic orbs. And then out of the three, obviously you're going to want to go with the stun damage because you're not going to be really ranging enemies. There are times where you're going to be using your gun, but that's only to proc plasma. You're not going to be using it for anywhere else. And then you have range damage, but again, you're not ranging anything other than proccing your status. So stun damage is the better one to go with. And then I went with melee charge instead of the combo finisher. Combo finisher is nice, a 25% damage increase, but the melee charge is going to be better because of the fact that you're getting a 5% heroic meter burst pretty much per hit for your light and heavyweight attacks. It's going to boost all your energy for your heroic abilities by 5% every time you hit. So that's why I went with melee charge. It's just, you'll notice a massive difference in the speed of your abilities coming back with this versus going with this. I don't go with Critical Juggler. I mean, it's nice and all, but there's going to be a lot of times where you're not juggling enemies, and sometimes it's actually not good to juggle your enemies because Black Widow can't dodge in midair. So if you get locked on, you're pretty much screwed. I mean, if you're gonna do a quick juggle, like go up, hit 1-2, and then do a slam, that's perfectly fine. But you don't want to stay in the air for a very long time because if you get caught while you're in the air, you're pretty much gonna be one shot because you are not gonna have a lot of health or armor at all. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the abilities. And yeah, there is another option you can go with for your waist or your heroic gear piece for Black Widow. Just in case you can't find a good Spectre's band, because Spectre's bands are locked behind daily villain sectors. So unless you're not able to farm it, then you're gonna definitely want to go with Red Room Cord. And the reason why is because Red Room Cord and the Spectre's band are pretty much neck and neck. This is just the legendary version of it. But the thing about legendary specific character specific gears is it's all static, so static stats and static perks. Obviously you can get higher stats than this. This is just really low rolled, but you can get it to come with like 50 might, 50 proficiency, which is pretty much like maxed out, and then you can get it to come with Spectre's Terror, Stealth Blitz, and Spectre's Cloak. Those are all three, like I said, static perks. Spectre's Terror guarantees chance of landing critical hit when attacking an enemy from behind while invisible. Amazing perk to go with because that basically gives you 100% crit chance. Stealth Blitz, which we already went over on the Spectre's band, 50% increased damage when invisibility is active, and then you have Spectre's Cloak, increase the duration of invisibility by 3 seconds. So if you don't have this really nicely rolled Spectre's band, Red Room Cord is 100% going to be the next best option to go with because of the I mean, like, if anything, you can just choose this over the Spectre's band even if you get a good rolled Spectre's band. Just because, I mean, the perks are really nice. What I do wish is the fact that proficiency was taken out and it was Valor, because of the fact that you don't really need proficiency anymore if you're going to be behind the enemy while invisible. You want to be able to just stack as much Valor as possible then. Otherwise, I mean, proficiency is kind of useless. I mean, other than the fact that the what's called the perk chance is still there. It's going to increase the percentages on most of your stats, on most of your gear pieces. But that's pretty much it with all the gear and everything. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some gameplay. And yeah, that's pretty much it with this video. Hopefully this helped you guys out. If it did, go and leave a like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions or concerns, let me know down in the comment section, and I'll try my best to help you guys out as best as possible. If you have any other ideas you think would be really good for this build, let me know down as well. Whatever other build videos you want to see, also just go ahead and let me know, and I'll try my best to put them out there. I do try to make my builds as perfect as possible before posting it, so it might take a while before I actually post because I don't want to just put on a build and then throw out an idea to you guys. I want to be able to actually test my build before sending it out to you guys, so that way you guys know that it works and how it works and how good it is, or if it's bad or whatever, if it fits your gameplay. But that's pretty much it. Like I said, if it helps you guys out, leave a comment, subscribe, and share the video. As always, anything on the PS4, have a good day, good night, and peace. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what I'm doing throughout this whole gameplay on this fight against Taskmaster on Challenge 4. It's the Elite Villain Sector. Taskmaster is very annoying though, because he basically blocks everything. Even if you're not hitting his actual shield, he still blocks it. So it just makes it a very annoying fight. But yeah, I normally just come here and destroy the turrets first because they also get annoying. They just randomly shoot you in the back. So do the lasers, but I just ignored it for now. So I'm going to use my ultimate first, and then my invisibility, and then I use my pistols just to try and apply the status effect to him as well. But as you can see, he moves around a lot, and his shield is just blocking a lot of the damage, and I'm not even hitting his shield. I'm shooting him directly in the back. But as you can see, I do end up applying fire on him, and then hit 343,000 damage 3 times in a row, which is a crit. The non-crit was the 92,000 damage, which is still a lot for a non-crit, but I think if it was a crit, it would have put him down to 1 bar left. And then pretty much he just started blocking all of my attacks. So to me, Taskmaster is the most cheesy boss in the game, just because of the fact that he blocks everything without blocking, which I think is something that needs to be overlooked or looked over. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I pretty much got Taskmaster almost killed, just within three crits and one non-crit. But the thing that you probably didn't notice is my invisibility ran out. So I could have been doing about 430,000 damage per crit on those crits, which would have ended up resulting in a finish. I would have ended up finishing Taskmaster right there. But unfortunately, I didn't save the footage where I did hit 437,000 damage. If you were here watching the stream though, then you would obviously have been able to witness it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, Taskmaster's the most cheesy boss in the game because of the fact that he can block anything, and not only that, but he has such a high status resistance. It doesn't matter what status effect you use on him, you have to be super fast. That's why I used my invisibility and my ultimate before I used my my gun, and I ended up missing my Widow's Bite there. I actually missed it twice, so it was really bad. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, you can definitely tell that I'm doing a lot of damage. I mean, 400,000 damage, or even 300,000 damage without being invisible is a lot of damage. But if I was invisible, that would have been 50% more damage right there. Or even, no, yeah, 50% more damage. But yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. I think it's still one of the best builds to go with in general. But it's really good actually for ads too, even for the adapters. The adapters die instantly with this build, which I probably should have made a little clip on, but it doesn't really matter. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that short fight.
Never learn, masters.
Ooh, a burn